Hello my friends, welcome back to This Week in Social Media. Australia is looking to pass a new law that will mean that social media can only be used from a specific minimum age. We talk about the Twitter files. We talk about some of the questionable practices that Mr. Beast has got up to in the second half of the Dog Pact video. We also talk about a new Tik Tok study. And we also got a new set of clips from a podcast with Adam over at Instagram on the Creator account, talking about all things trust, authenticity, and how to deal with cancellations. So we heard this week that Australia is going to make a law, or potentially is talking about the idea of making a law for a minimum age for using social media. This is likely to be, this was reported by the BBC, and it's likely to be between 14 and 16. We're unsure at the moment about where it's going to sit specifically. The PM of Australia has said, quote, "I want to see kids off their devices and under the football fields and at the swimming pools and tennis courts." He's worried about the mental health consequences that many young people have to, quote, deal with, end quote, and the bullying that can occur online, which can also cause self-harm. So it's this conversation around, is there a benefit? Is it a good idea for children who are impressionable to be on these social media platforms, or is that causing mental health concerns or negative? I know there's been conversations as well around, body positivity and things like that as well. There's obviously been conversations around, self-harm, suicide, depression, those kind of things have been a big conversation about, should kids be on social media? Are they old enough or smart enough, or is their brain developed enough so that they can understand context? They can understand these things, the double checking of information, etc. I've talked in multiple shows that I personally think this is a good thing for Australia to do, and to an extent I would say within reason that it should be something that Europe should follow, America should follow, etc. Any of these kind of Western cultures that have access to social media, I think is really important, because I think one of the things which will always serve you is the ability to be in touch with your values, especially as a child, but also to be able to have those social skills, to be able to read a situation and change or know how to articulate yourself, but also I would argue as well, stand up for what you believe is right as well, which I think sometimes you could make the argument to say that some parts of social media aren't helping that move forward. So this is that whole part of that conversation. But also, it does open up a question as well, which is, what is the positive side, right? Is this a natural progression of people, or us as humans, to how we socialize and how we communicate? As someone who spent a lot of his early years building my identity, my thoughts, my social skills through online communities and through video game guilds and etc. In that respect, there is a argument to say, or there is a point to say, that within moderation there is certain times or certain realities where you should use it. Now, to be fair, I think the age of 14 to 16 is a good window, right? And I think, to be honest, from maybe the age of 14, 15, around then, I think you could start introducing social media, or this concept of always being on the internet and having your opinions. I watched a video from a gaming creator called Asmagod a couple of days ago, talking about the rise of kind of hustle culture. Let me know in the comment section down below if you want me to do a more deep dive on this as well. But it was talking about kids emulating some of the quote unquote hustle culture creators and being in a position where they want to quote, go and be in Dubai and doing all this kind of hustling and this alpha male kind of content. I'm happy to talk about that in shows, but let me know in the comment section down below. But the question I wanted to ask and was added is, the reason behind this in the BBC article was, quote, they also have added that the parents were worried sick about what experiences there might be on social media. Now, I think for me, this element here is more about, maybe, I don't know the full context on that quote, but I think for me it's about, as a parent, are you educated and are you involved in your child's life and their viewing habits in that respect? So are you aware of what they're consuming on social media? What is their quote-unquote content diet? I think that's really important, and this does pose the question I wanted to bring to the show, which is, whose responsibility is it to, I guess, police the social media accounts or police what children see, right? We reported in last week's show that TikTok is, really pushing in and really creating some new safety guidance, safety input on being able to showcase and help young people have a safer time on TikTok specifically. So, I think for me, the question that I would leave you with, or the question I would give to you or ask you to think about is the responsibility, A, of a government? So in this case, obviously Australia feel, then yes, it is a government's responsibility to police and regulate these things. And I'm not saying one answer is correct or the other. I'm curious on what people think. Or is it the parents' responsibility to vet what their children are consuming and how they're consuming social media? And or is it actually on the social media platforms themselves to regulate it? Or, which I imagine will probably be the more common answer or the more common reality, which is going to be most likely, what specifically, is it a combination of all the above? Do we need the government to come in certain areas? Do we need the social media platforms to put certain quote-unquote guardrails in? And or is it your responsibility, or one's responsibility as a parent, to ensure what your child is looking at on social media? Do they have access to a phone? How often are they on their phone? Do you monitor their phone? Do you have parental controls on the telly and the phone and the consoles that they're playing on and using, etc.? And, as I say, what is their content diet, so to speak? And this is something that was also picked up in the BBC article and the BBC report that I used as part of my research for this story, where they were asking the same debate has happened. How much time should people spend on young people spend on their phones? What are they viewing? Specifically, what behaviours are, there is a counter argument that I kind of alluded to earlier, which is, this is potentially how the younger, newer, someone who grew up with social media, grew up with the internet, grew up with social, this is how you could argue we connect, or one connects with their friends, and they educate themselves and get informed. But I guess the question, and this leans into a larger question around misinformation and kind of what information's online, how do we vet that information, etc., and do we vet those extremist views or not? And that's the question, I guess. But it goes into the same thing, right? Which is, as an adult as well, how do you monitor what you consume? How are you staying on top of what's going on? Do you follow this show perhaps? Do you follow mainstream media? Do you follow more independent work from other independent creators and independent people? Is that your preferred view? There is a large conversation at the moment about, can we trust the mainstream media? The BBC have recently, at the time of recording, got into some quite hot water related to some actions related to some of their staff and some of the people who worked at the organisation. Does that hurt their reputation? To be honest, it will be interesting to see what the reaction of this law is, but also we will probably see it within the next 6 to 12 months, because there is going to be a new election in Australia soon, and the new government has said they want to do it before that election. So I believe, if I recall correctly, that election is in May next year, which means we'll see it within the next 8 months or so, and I'll be sure to update obviously this story if and when new information does come out. But that is going to wrap up the first story. But as always, do you think there should be a minimum age specifically on social media? Do you think specifically that it's down to the government? Those questions I asked before, let me know in the comment section down below. So I know there's going to be a lot of people who say that the Twitter files, this is old news, etc, etc, etc. I still wanted to cover it. I still want to talk about it. That's why it's here. So there's been, and I'm just going to read from my notes just so I can get through quite a lot of the information. Along with all the sources that I use will be down below, as always. So some right-leaning people believe they were shadow banned or being shut up or censored on Twitter. There has been some reports of a non-amplify ability has been added to accounts, which was used to hide accounts and hurt their reach from accounts in question for the creators to create quote-unquote hurtful accounts or breaking the rules. However, the account holders were never told this was happening. Musk wishes to change this as he took over. So it sounds like Twitter did actually censor the Hunter Biden story due to the fact that, again, as we talked about in the Meta linked episode, that it was potentially a misinformation campaign from Russia. The older owner, Jack, who has also said this was a mistake. So to do so, we heard last week's show, as I said, but it wasn't 100% sure. They weren't 100% sure how to act, right? They weren't 100% sure. Do we suppress it? Do we not? Etc. When the story broke. Now, I think this is where we need to be quite careful, and this is, one of the things that, regardless of whether you like Elon or not, he did bring to X or Twitter, now, which is, and I quote, a tweet from November 2022, which was around the time he bought the company, there or thereabouts. The new Twitter policy is for freedom of speech, but not for freedom of reach. Negative/hateful tweets will be max deboosted and demonetized, so no ads or no other revenue from Twitter. And you will only be able to find the tweet unless you won't find the tweet unless you specifically seek it out. There is which is no different from the rest of the internet. And I think this is the important element, right? We saw this with the adpocalypse on YouTube. We also saw this when there's been, I've specifically recently, since doing the show, had this happen where I posted a video talking about a clip which I made very clear I wasn't 100% sure whether it was true or not, and a bot at TikTok in this case stroked the video, allegedly saying it was against misinformation guidelines and so on, and it specifically said in that misinformation point that it was to do with self-harm. The video didn't talk about self-harm at all. It was about talking about a doctor claiming that the US had put out a lot of misinformation regarding COVID. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I was pointing at the video and saying, this is alarming and this is the reaction. But as we've said, and as we'll get onto a little bit later, TikTok is a private company in the same way Twitter is a private company. So this could be a moral argument to say, well, actually, they can do what they want in that regard. Moving slightly back to the reports and the research I've done on the Twitter files, CNN also reported that those files that were put out maybe have chosen a percentage of those files to make the left look bad. So this is the conversation around there is a specific ideology or a specific set of staff in Twitter, YouTube, etc. And are they leaning into a certain narrative, right? It could be a establishment narrative. It could be they're more agreeing with liberal sides of arguments or liberal thoughts, or the opposite side as well, right? I've talked about in shows that Elon Musk is a right-leaning figure. This could be what is perceived. Now, the question that comes from this is, of course, when a leak like the Twitter files comes out, is it picks and choose? Has it been chosen in that way? Has it been manipulated just to see one side of the argument, right? We've talked about how this is an issue and how this is a concern and why this is technically not a good idea before, but that's what we don't know at the moment. And Jack, who is the old owner of Twitter, has called for what I've found, this hasn't happened yet, but what it has done is, there was a call to release all of the Twitter files in their entirety, right? So independent journalists, so mainstream media, so people like myself, etc., can go through all of them and see what really happened. Now, there was also a conversation and also quite a lot of question marks and quite a lot of, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on in this conversation around the Twitter files, but Trump was banned in the first, as you may remember, in the last couple of days of his term with 88.9 million followers. Now, there was a lot of talk at the time, and there has been a lot of talk since about the fact that that's quite alarming, right? Now, those who don't follow politics, those who think that Trump's just a dick, I don't agree with his politics, that's fine. But Trump's specific strategy, in my understanding, is to be controversial, is to say some outlandish things. It's a very similar strategy to an extent to what we saw with Boris Johnson as well in the UK, where he would deliberately be the Tommy fool, deliberately be the, the vegan kind of joke. That kind of humour, that was his campaign marketing strategy, you could say. Now, does it work? Trump and him and etc., but mostly Trump specifically, understands that the people who will support him, the people that will rally behind him, are slightly more extreme in their views. They are, you could say, again, this is an opinion, but you could say that they're more redneck, they're more, right, yeah, America, ooh, yeah. In that respect. So he is deliberately going to become memeable, or say, we saw it more recently with his there is obviously the lead up to the US election taking place right now, as it's in, I think it's about 7 weeks at the time of recording, and he made something that was wrong or right, probably maybe not factual, I don't know, I haven't looked into it, but he did say stuff in that debate that became memeable.
Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
I just want to clarify here, you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Right, and I think it was something along the lines of they were eating, cats or dogs or etc. I don't know the full logistics of it, but the point that I'm making here is he's deliberately going to be provoking. He's deliberately going to be a controversial figure to react, and showcase that kind of thought process. But it does also bring out, because you are that kind of, not centrist, it does bring out the opposite side that then quote unquote hates you. At the time of recording as well, we've seen Donald Trump has had 2 attempts on his life in the span of 2 months, and I jokingly said whilst watching the news yesterday, is this going to be a common occurrence? Is this going to be every month before the election? There'll be unfortunately a attempt, at least, on Donald Trump's life. And for the record, I don't think that violence in politics is a good idea, and I don't think violence, and I think there is a level of rhetoric you need to be careful about. But I am getting slightly off point, but I think it does, and this leads into this question around big tech, this leads into this big question around, can a platform such as Twitter that does have power in public discourse, can it censor one side of the political argument? Can it get away with, or feel that it's justifiable to, quote, kick off a president, as many EU leaders were worried about that when it happened, and what does that actually say about the situation, and what does it say about the power, I think, that these conglomerates actually have over public discourse, but also who is being elected and who is being voted in that respect as well. There was also this conversation as well about, did Twitter specifically have a back channel, or were they talking to law enforcement, or were they having consistent meetings with law enforcement, and what potentially would that mean, right? And I was planning to talk a little bit more in detail about that, but I think what I'll do is I'll just link down to the resources that I have done, and I actually want to get to the question, which was the more important element that I was going to end that section of it, which was, there is this conversation around, the monopolies of these big tech companies, and the government is potentially in an antitrust legal proceeding with them. And there is this strange coincidence that, if Twitter, for example, in this case, as we're talking about the Twitter files, we're going to come out and say, well, we are aware of this thing, or these things that we may not like, that may go against that agenda, especially as we talked in the Meta's case, where the Biden administration was pushing on Meta to censor specific information that could make their administration look bad. It was this situation where, is it conspiracy theory? Is it thoughts? Is it opinion? I don't know. But, it would be a shame if you were to just miraculously get broken up by a government antitrust lawsuit because you didn't follow suit, is the implied reality, or the implied point of view. And I think that's the question, right? And it doesn't look good for, and it's about those stories, and should people have access to that information anyway, and then be able to make their own critical mind over who to vote for. And I personally think the more information, and this is the argument about why Jack didn't remove some more controversial tweets and some more concerning tweets about, he said, and also I think Elon would agree, that actually having these people on the platform, having them tweet in real time, having them share their views on social media is better than, because you can gain a better gauge on what's going on in their head and who you're then voting for, than having them not, and having them silenced, having them banned, and putting them into their own echo chamber. So I know that when Trump was banned, he launched his own social media platform, etc., things like that. And I think that's how we, become more aware, and we become more connected as a populace, because we can take the information for what it is. We can see and we can analyze it, and we can say, okay, well, what is true, what isn't true, what do I like, what do I not like, why do I not like it, etc. And I think that's a potentially better way of having that discourse, especially when we're talking about some stuff that is as important as who wins an election and who potentially you're going to vote for, regardless of your jurisdiction. That is, in a democratic world, that's how we go about it. We choose, we hear information, we hear arguments, and then I would hope that people go and they say, actually, I like this person's view on the world and what they want to do allegedly better than, not. So yeah. So, as also reported by The Hill, the part 2 of the Twitter files showed that a new #Twitter files investigation shows that the team of Twitter employees built a blacklist and also to prevent defavorable tweets from trending, and likely limit the visibility to the accounts, including the trending tab as well. All in secret, unknowing to users. Would it be fair for employees to limit a post in trending or accounts, and likely due to their own views, which is kind of what we already alluded to, and say on a topic, say, I don't like X or Y person, but without telling them. And I think that's the key, right? Because, and I suppose it comes back to the question of, there has been this conversation in the research I've done about, you can't, we can't be in a situation where you can't critique decisions made by government, because that's how a government will just stonewall whatever happens, right? There was also talk about there's been some accounts removed purely because and added to trend blacklists and added to their reach and not being really seen by followers that didn't necessarily say we need violence, didn't necessarily say anything hateful, but questioned a specific decision that was made by an administration. And I'll leave some examples down below, and I'll maybe put some on screen, etc., that show this of some accounts that happened. But it was also reported, should big tech businesses be transparent on how and why they are actually going about sharing or limiting that reach, or quote unquote shadow banning people, and the conversation was, and what it sounded like in some of the later parts of my research on the Twitter files, from what I could find, was that there was this culture at Twitter around, we're going to want to make a decision and then we're going to find ways to do it, rather than someone does a thing, they say a tweet, they do a thing, and then they say, okay, well, this is in breach of our policy because of X, Y, and Z, and now this is our response. And I think personally the second half of that, or the latter part of that, is a better way of running things and a better way of running a social media platform that says, well, look, we have very clear guidelines on misinformation. We have very clear guidelines on specific hate speech, or where the line is, right? And this is that conversation. It's important to have a conversation around decisions that were made or weren't made by a government, by an organization, by big tech, etc. But we shouldn't limit the reach of that just because it's an unpopular opinion, in my view, because I think that's how it can be very shifted and one-sided. Because if you don't give it a fair crack of the whip, you then only have what's being allowed to be seen as the popular view, instead of having a more and I guess the counter argument would be, well, that's against the controversial-esque stuff that you could say that get people riled up and fire these social media platforms as algorithms because of the comments, the shares, the likes, etc. But I think for me, we need to, and as a society, as a community, as social media users, as big tech, etc., there needs to be a better solution. There needs to be a better middle ground than we're going to censor something that might get us, quote unquote, in trouble, or is not a very popular view, as long as it's truthful, of course. And I may not agree with it, but I'm still going to allow that to exist in that respect as well. It was also very quickly, I don't want to bog down the show necessarily with just this, but it was proven and reported by The Hill that social media moderators, misinformation reporters, federal health advisors and national security officials have got misinformation wrong, right? So it's not even like necessarily, and that's not pointing a finger and just you, right? We don't always know, and some people can get it wrong even if they are in an official position. So it isn't necessarily, I don't think the solution is anyway, that the government is the all-hearting solution for what is and isn't misinformation. It should be what's factually true and what can be proven with science and scientific facts in that regard as well. So I guess this does kind of end. I'll end the show. I'll end this topic on a question for you, which is what is your view? Do you think that social media is moving in the correct path at cracking down and helping obviously our young people not see a lot of this misinformation? Because to be honest, I think a lot of it is in quite adult conversations anyway, regarding politics, regarding policy, regarding terms and conditions. These aren't necessarily things that are going to in some ways bleed into the youth, and I think we need to be careful. And I think, as I said, I kind of lean back into the first conversation that we had about, or should children be on social media, and if so, who's that responsibility? Is it the government? Is it the parents? Is it down to the social media platforms to vet it and say, look, this is not okay, or this is what we should have, or should we have children versions of the apps? I think that's a more important conversation, because I think we can't have a free democratic state or a free democratic reality if we're not given all the information to be able to make our own decisions as adults, which to an extent, if that's the reality we want, and that means children can't be online, or they have to have a different version of the internet, or they have to have a more kind of walled off protected version, then I think that's a positive thing, and that's something that we should do as a society. But I would love to hear what you think down below, so do let me know. So last week we talked about the first I was going to say about 14.5 minutes or so of Dogpack's first video alleging that Mr. Beast fakes videos, and some other claims as well. I'll leave that video in the card and also down in the description for those who wish to watch it. But we're going to be continuing for the rest of that first or thoughts on the rest of that first video and some of the claims, some of which has been illegal lotteries, really dicey marketing practices, and also very quick updated news, because I know this is semi-older news. That I watched a video this morning that wasn't ideal for Mr. Beast, because he is combining and he is collaborating with KSI and Logan Paul, who are known for marketing to children as well, but also, especially Logan specifically, you know, not exactly known for not doing things that are perceived not as scams, is what I'll say. So is that a good brand decision from Mr. Beast, or is he just trying to cash in on the potential downfall, the controversy, the issues that Dogpack has brought up, but also what has come out of the woodwork since then, but specifically focusing on the Dogpack video. Today we're going to be showing some serious claims that Dogpack made in his first video, claiming that Mr. Beast ran fake or illegal lotteries. Within Dogpack's video, he shows that the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, defines a lottery as needs to require three things. So A prize, something of value; B, a chance, a random chance of someone winning it; and a way, and then number C, a way of someone doing something or paying into the ability to then win the said prize, right? To run a sweepstakes or a competition, you need to remove, allegedly, one of the above situations from taking place. Now, Dogpack also shows a set of clips from Mr. Beast's 40 million special live stream, where he claims that illegal lotteries took place. I'm unsure personally if this is a matter whether it's not an illegal lottery or not, but purely showcasing the underhand fear of missing out marketing tactics that was used to basically hoodwink either young children or their parents specifically into buying the scammy or very shitty things to do. So buying more merch and really boosting those numbers specifically. And I will leave Dogpack's video down below because there was a lot more evidence than I'm going to specifically talk about in this video, because I just want to pick up a couple of bits and talk about them specifically. Alongside also with some manipulating of viewers and claiming that he isn't going to make any money if I keeps giving things away. So this
our city is sold out of PlayStations. We don't have any. We have to give away. Are we trying to not sell merch?
Came from a point inside the live stream where he was, I guess, implying that he wasn't going to make any money, or the viewers should feel sorry for him because he wasn't going to make any money, because he was giving away PlayStations, he was giving away bundles of cash, he was giving away etc., prizes, iPhones, etc. This has been a notorious way on YouTube for a very long time, where you can quote unquote buy subscribers without technically buying subscribers, because buying subscribers is against YouTube terms of service. However, if you say, for example, happened to, spend lots of money on new phones, and just so happened to say, subscribe, I will be giving away these phones to people who subscribe in the next 24 hours, or something along those lines, you would have an influx of subs that you can then grow your channel from, and you've bought some items that are normally quite well priced, like high priced items that would be unaffordable for your children audience, and you're now buying them in exchange for subscribers. So that's buying subscribers, right? I'm sure you're smart enough to understand. And this is the problem. And there has been some alleged, and there's been a lot of evidence in the Dogpat video as well later on that says, well, you didn't send it. You know, the people who bought the merch didn't get money when you said they would. They didn't get a PlayStation and they said they would. Now, this might be a minority, but there is evidence online and there is evidence there that says, well, no, you said one thing and then you didn't do that. So at worst, that's disingenuous. At most, that's false advertising. So at best, what he's doing by creating these illegal lotteries or this kind of prize or money within the sales of his merchandise, he's basically getting children hooked on gambling, or at least promoting or showcasing gambling to children. Dogpat also claims there's a lot of comments and etc. that they didn't, as I said, they didn't get their money, specifically with one of the crew signing MB, which is notoriously known as Mr. Beast's signature, followed by his own name. Now, this, of course, is a very shitty thing to do, but also would be classed as false advertising, because if you're building a parasocial relationship with a audience and they believe that you are personally going to sign that, so it holds inherent value that you are doing it for that person because you have a parasocial relationship with the quote amazing Mr. Beast or amazing Jimmy, etc., then by one of your crew, which actually I guess the counter argument could say, well, it said it in the terms and conditions when you bought it, but that's still an unfair comparison, because you should say in your marketing that it will be signed by one of the crew, not by Mr. Beast necessarily specifically. You might get lucky and you might get one that was signed, but it is false advertising, because if you're saying they will all be signed by the crew and everyone will do their own signatures, and then that ends up not being true, which there has been video evidence shown to be the case, that is false advertising. That's the definition of false advertising. And as we'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about Feastables, you know, Mr. Beast isn't exactly immune to false advertising. Now, this might be mistakes and these might be things that fall through the cracks when you're running that big of a thing, sure, fine. But that doesn't change the false advertising. That doesn't change the damage, quote unquote, that was done by him doing that. There's also a lot more the Dogpat shares, as I said. I'll leave the video down in the description. I would recommend you watch it if you're more interested. But a key point I wanted to share was when Mr. Beast launched his chocolate bar brand, he sold into the nostalgia of the mum and dad that were potentially going to be asked by their child when they're next in Walmart or etc. To buy, quote unquote, the YouTuber chocolate bar, because everyone grew up, or a large percentage of us grew up with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was one of his launch videos, or one of his launch ideas for the chocolate bar. Now, that's smart on its own. However, it's kind of questionable because of how he went about doing it and the logistics of it, and the fact that he was going to put a golden ticket. It's a good idea. It works in marketing. It gives large fear of missing out. It's great. It means, but the byproduct is, because you're marketing to children, you're going to get them hooked on gambling. B, allegedly, it just so happened to be a YouTuber with 767,000 subscribers as of, I believe it was January 22, happened to get a golden ticket. And even in the video, I think it was the YouTuber's partner said, "Oh my God, Mr. Beast had chosen us to be in the Chocolate Factory video," which was to basically be in a competition to then win the Chocolate Factory that Mr. Beast used for the video. Or I think it was $500,000 or something like that, because of the running costs of the Chocolate Factory. That was also endorsed by Gordon Ramsay, etc., etc., etc. So adding more credibility, I suppose you could say, to the chocolate and the fact that it was healthy. And, you know, there's been lots of controversy, or lots of questions around that as well. But, you know, I don't personally think, and it's possible that, and I'm trying to give Mr. Beast the benefit of the doubt here, and I think that it's fair to say that, you know, you probably want one or two really, really good characters to help in your video. If you're doing the golden ticket principle to help with your content, and that's a marketing strategy for Feastables, sure, then you probably want one or two YouTubers that are probably really charismatic and really good on camera to potentially carry that entertainment value. But why didn't he just invite those people and then say we're going, and then bring, say for example there was only 5 people or 10 people or however many it was that you could put in the video? Why didn't you just then say, okay, cool, we're going to invite 2 or 3, but then we're going to run a competition for the other slots, and then you could do the golden ticket and so on? But again, I still question the moral reality of marketing to children that where you have a chance to win the golden ticket if you buy more chocolate, because that's how it was perceived. Now, okay, you could make the argument to say that Willy Wonka started this issue or started this concern, but again, that's a film and that's arguably fictional, and it's kind of deliberately been talked about to be taken with a pinch of salt. Mr. Beast did this in reality. Of course he did, because it makes money and it's a great idea. But also there's been some controversies around him saying, well, it's really, really healthy when he first launched it, and has, you know, it was better than Hershey's, which was their main product provider, and now it's ended up having to be shifted to be worse. Now, he has, to be fair to Jimmy, talked about this at length, where he said, well, it wasn't really selling, people weren't as interested, etc, etc, etc. But arguably, I would say that's because you sold a false promise, right? If you're saying, oh, it's healthy and it's really good and it's better for you, and then, you know, when that hype dies down and when it's known that you sell chocolate, does that mean that it's necessarily going to mean that chocolate bars? And there's also conversations around like random chance to win 5k or be in a video, etc., to help Walmart stores, or allegedly help Walmart stores kind of make sure that Feastables' area of the chocolate aisle was really, really great. Now, there's been a lot of kind of controversy around this as well, because he's also been notoriously known for talking about the obesity problem, talking about the issues with people eating too much chocolate, right? And then he launches a chocolate brand, and now what it's looking like at the moment anyway is he's launching a Lunchables competitor with Logan Paul and KSI, as well as two other massive creators whose audiences are all children, right? So the market is very clearly for parents to buy them for their children, but also massive audiences combining. And is Jimmy potentially, as I said, did he always have these morals? Is he got to a size where he's just purely looking at how do I generate as much revenue as possible to pay for all of the things I do in my videos? Because he's got to have high level of production cost, he's got to have lots of staff, etc. But, you know, I think for me, you've got to ask yourself what is the right thing to do, rather than what is the most profitable thing to do, I think. And for me, for a longevity point of view and a long tail or a long build of a brand, especially when something like this, when you grow to this size, you can have issues like this. And this is, to be honest, this is actually some of the smaller issues that we're going to talk about related to Mr. Beast, because as I said, I'm going to cover everything, but I want to do it in the order that it came out in and do it properly. That's why it's not going to be current. A little bit more about a shady practice. I've shared my views specifically on the chocolate brand and how he went about doing that. I would love to hear what you think down below. But Dogpat also shows a video where a winner wins $1 million as a giveaway and claims he was rushed to spend it. Now, he won in another video. Now, this could be Jimmy's fault. This could also be the bigger question around the game when it comes to creating clickable titles. Because I helped a subscriber, or I let a subscriber spend £1 million of my money, less clickable than this guy only has 24 hours to spend $1 million. The problems that come is that he felt that he's come out since and said that he was rushed. He felt like he, couldn't really use the money or use the money to change his life as much as it could have done if he had obviously been given the time. There was also some kind of questionable practices regarding, you know, paperwork that was signed related to cars and etc., and it quote unquote being forced into it because, again, you've only got 24 hours. So what, you've got to spend £1 million or dollars or etc. in that time. So you're going to waste time reading a contract. What's that contract agreeing you to, etc. And there's some of the issues. You know, there was also some alleged claims that Jimmy never followed up when it came to helping him invest, or, you know, they picked the first house rather than the right house, and things like that. And I think I won't go too much into detail because I don't want to take from Dogpat's video, but it just shows more about the issue regarding the clickable title. There's one thing to say about how do we package our videos, sure. There's another thing saying about, is it wrong for the person winning the money? Now, this is probably a first world problem. Oh, you've got £1 million, he has to spend it in 24 hours. Because that is a good title, right? That is a good clickable title. But it's I guess the question of, it could have been a lot better for that person, and you could make the counter argument to say, well, he's just complaining because he didn't think about it or plan it ahead of time. But I guess the question and the reason why Dogpat maybe brought it up is because it's to critique Jimmy's behavior and critique Jimmy's morals and critique Jimmy and how he operates, right? Now, as I said in the previous videos, some of what Jimmy does, I personally think is just production, right? Now, you could make the argument to say, well, what here is just, that's the game. You have to play the game. If his model is, I'm going to spend £1 million or dollars, right? How many other people are going to do that? How many people have the disposable income or the reality to do that? You know, he notoriously is known for allegedly, you know, going and giving large sums of money to random people as a title because it's clickable, because it gives that wow factor, it gives that Mr. Beastification of YouTube. But I remember listening to a Casey Neistat conversation, which is, you know, people are, and this will lean into a conversation, another story as well, but people are looking for authenticity now. They're not looking to be sold to. And I saw an article as well talking about the influencer space is becoming harder, or the creator space is becoming harder because people want truth. I guess this leans into an extent as well about the lack of trust in mainstream media as well. But as I said, I think that if you are looking at getting into this space and you are looking to create content, potentially get brand deals, etc., be authentic to yourself, right? Don't necessarily do, and there's certain moral things like titles and such that I'll only go so far with, because I disagree with the concept of creating a title that has a negative knock-on effect to the actual outcome of the video. So in the $1 million case, in 24 hours, yes, you're giving this guy loads of money, and yes, that's a great thing, but actually, are you hurting him by rushing him through it? Are you hurting how good it could be, or how good it would have been, and would he actually have been better off, arguably? Because if he's locked into contracts that end up costing him more money over the long term, if actually, and we don't know this, we don't actually know how much money in cash necessarily, or he could have burnt the cash, right, and still be let's say he leased the cars, he could be still stung with those monthly payment costs without having a pot of money to pay for them. So this is how you can potentially, or this is how that reality, and I'm not saying any of this is true, but this could be a reality where actually the person who won £1 million in a video, or $1 million in a video, is worse off because of Jimmy's actions long term as well. But arguably, is Jimmy busy? Is Jimmy too busy to, whether he does care or actually do anything about it, to right that wrong potentially? But that covers the first dog pack video. What do you think about some of Mr. Beast's behaviour, some of his marketing kind of tactics? Are they shady? Are they shitty? You know, anything I touched on in this video, let me know down below. And now we're going to move on to the TikTok study that was released on the 3rd of September TikTok shares some interesting facts and input on how to create and share trailers on the platform. Personally, I wanted to show and see what we could learn from this as small business owners to create ads and content creation as well, to potentially get you more clients and customers depending on what you're looking for. So what did the study actually show us and tell us? Within this study, TikTok was a discovery tool for new movies. The study claimed that 73% of those who watched a trailer, and then 42% of the people within the study then looked up and then took an action towards actually seeing when this movie time was shared. 47% claimed they discussed the movie with others, so building hype around seeing the movie. Hey, we should go see this thing because it's really, really good, really, really cool, looks great, fantastic. And 36% purchased a ticket to view the movie. TikTok also wanted to share and give some time to highlight the Spotlight, or the TikTok Shop tool within TikTok as well, that allows someone who sees your trailer, your marketing, your content to, in this case specifically, go directly to then purchase or then act if they wish to on buying that ticket as well. The study also showed that 1 in 3 moviegoers on TikTok said that the app was a source of the lead to make them watch the new movie in theaters, right? So we're seeing this behavioral shift. We're seeing, is that marketing actually changing behavior and making it more likely that someone's going to purchase with you? So in this case, it was a ticket for a movie and having that uplift, or it could be, hey, I've seen your content. Hey, I've had value adds from your content. So when it comes to me doing videos, or when it comes to whatever you sell, I'm then going to choose you over choosing a competitor because you've added value as well. There was also a 18% uplift from the ads run in total 3 to 4 weeks, as some moviegoers normally wait to see the first week in regards to the reviews and how it's done and how it's done in sales before making the choice to see the movie on the big screen. So this is, I guess, a conversation around, when do you cut off your budget spend? When do you cut off your ads? Do you just run them straight up to when you release the film? But they're actually, according to this study at least, seeing a 18% uplift if you continue to run your advertising or your trailers and your campaign beyond the initial window of time when you're releasing that film, because of course films normally stay in cinemas for about 6 weeks or so. So in that first 3 to 4 weeks, it's normally a good idea just to continue to slightly push or slightly help people make that decision to go and see it, and really help them push over into the sales transactional reality. Whether that in business it could be having a sales call, but also in this case it would be purchasing that ticket as well. And this does, as I said, bring up the large question around marketing. You need to carry on doing it to be top of mind, regardless of what is happening in the world. And I know I'm going to address the elephant in the room. There is a lot of conversations, and I'm having lots of conversations with people at the moment that are finding this year harder. And, I think it comes back to, are you building for the long term? Are you looking for short-term success or sustainable business? And are you willing to put the work in that will require you to have to make whatever business that you're running work, whether that's a pivot into a new business or a continuation of your already established business, or potentially the new one you're starting. You have to continue to market consistently so that you can create those touch points, create those value adds, create that reputational gain for you to continue to move forward and continue to be aware of your service. So when they're ready to purchase from you, they're going to choose you over choosing a competitor. There's also more information as well, which we're really, really hearing more about, and they're sort of adding into the packaging of your content as well, that 1.5 times is really, really important. And quote, research found that the ads featuring TikTok trends in the first few seconds are 1.5 more likely to hook attention to keep viewers watching. So this is a conversation of, should you trend jack or not? But I guess it's a larger question around, should you actually be in a position where you really, really focus on your hooks Now, your hook, for those who don't know, is the first couple of seconds of each video that you produce. So the job of a hook is to validate your title and your thumbnail to first get the click, but then also tell that audience member, yes, this is the right video, you are watching the video, you are going to enjoy the video, you are going to enjoy the content. And how do we increase the likelihood and make showy or make amazing hooks that really help bring audiences, but also build trust within those audiences? And for me, that's where we need to be very careful with our hooks, because if we use them wrong and we use them a little bit more, the headline kind of esque way, where it's a bit too far from the truth, you're actually going to make distrust, and people are going to click away faster because they're going to go, hold on, I clicked on this video and I was expecting this, but I didn't get that. So it needs to be within synergy of your title, your thumbnail, and then the first couple of seconds of the video. So something I'm working on for this show, when I cut the standalone videos out, is work on, okay, when does the actual story start when I talk about it, and get straight into that content, so that those who came for the news can come and take the news, those who want my opinion can come and take my opinion. Cool. Those who want both, fantastic, let's have that conversation. Would love for you to continue this conversation in the comments down below, and I'd love to hear what you think. But that is why hooks can be done. And if you would like me to do some more standalone videos talking about hooks, good ones, bad ones, looking at ads, looking at etc., let me know in the comment section down below. I'll be sure to do that. That'd be good fun. Might do that anyway. So there's also some other data that claims that by jumping on trends, you can increase your brand awareness, but just be, again, that is what I would say, is just be very careful that it's going to firstly create more views of the right people, but also number two, make sure that it's not going to dilute your brand in any way, or for you to be perceived as a the perception on TikTok for a long time was it is just a dancing platform. Does it unseriousize, I guess you could say, if that's a word, your business and your brand and the service and the value that you wish to add to your clients and your customers in that respect as well. And as the final story for today's episode is that we also heard from Adam, the CEO of Instagram, with a brand new curator interview with the comedy curator, Hayley. Now, Hayley posted a clip, and they both posted a clip about and talking about why production value matters. And the conversation that they were having was that it should be within your level of authenticity, and is it going to help bridge or move you closer to your end goal, right? Because as I alluded to earlier in the show, there is conversations, or there is realities that people are really striving for authentic people now, because of the flood of Instagram influencers and Facebook influencers and so on, and the creator economy. And I think that for me, the question of production quality is an interesting one, because for me, as someone who runs a video production company and someone who runs a video production service, it's important for me to have high production quality, because that's what I sell. If what you sell is coaching, or if what you sell, like Hayley, is being funny and being yourself, how is that going to help? Is that going to be authentic? Possibly not. If you're not a tech person, then it probably wouldn't be. Her entire role is about being funny, right? Her entire role is that it's very clear that she's created her own content. Specifically, it's very clear that she is creating it on her phone, and that's authentic to her. And it's about how do we increase that relationship with our audience, with our viewers, with our clients, with our consumers potentially that are consuming this brand, not in a salesy, dirty, horrible way, but in a, hey, you can trust me. And that does bridge quite nicely into the how do you build trust with your audience, and it comes back to the love and the passion for the work you do, rather than it always being perceived as you're looking for the brand deal, you're looking for the advertising opportunity, you're looking for the upsell, you're looking for the, hey look, here's my course, hey look, here's my thing, oh look, here's my thing to come and buy it. If you're in business and you're creating business content, yes, you should lead with value. Yes, you should have a percentage of your content that does talk about what you do and help sell that, sure. But actually, a lot of creators are finding that if they just showcase themselves, their passions, their thoughts, their opinions, that they'll naturally rise to the top because they're going to be more consistent. And there has been a lot of data that shows that they're going to be more consistent with their content. They're going to show up more. And something I'm going to do in a couple of weeks is be very open and transparent how this show numbers are, and sort of talk a little bit about how I go about creating it and etc. like that as well. But that builds into me being authentic, that builds into my core values, that builds into me meaning that I can hopefully be trusted and be perceived as a trust authority, and that's something else they talk about building trust with an audience and being grateful for that audience, and not I guess in some ways audience is not being taken advantage of just because you've done you've got this audience and now you're going to do a load of brand deals. And I was having a private conversation, a personal conversation this week about this as well. We've seen it in the the celebrity world, where someone becomes really, really famous and they do loads of ads and they quote unquote sell out, and they dilute their brand, they dilute the long-term reputation that they have or had, just for those ad wins, those ad paychecks. Now everyone has to do a balance and everyone has to make money, sure, if this is your full thing and your full income, but at what balance is it? Is it intrusive? Is it intrusive, etc.? And I read a meme the other day that was like, by your ad interrupting the video I'm enjoying, I then hate your product or service, allegedly, right? So that's something to consider and think about how we bring in advertising into content, and how we go about sharing the word and sharing and showcasing what we do when it comes to wanting to get more clients, wanting to get more leads, wanting to get more attention from the right people about our product and service. They also talked about how to deal with negativity. Specifically, the question I guess I would add here is, what negative is it? There's clearly something. If you're getting a huge amount of negative comments that either you've done or that they said they had kind of knocked into, or it's hurting your audience in some way. So that might be a psychological thing for them. It might remind them, or there might be an issue there with them. And I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk, but also others who have shared it, where you could and should lead with compassion when you get a hate comment and try to say, well, clearly this person isn't having a very good day, etc. They're going to potentially use you as a vessel to get that anger or that issue or that concern out. In that respect as well, but I think as well it's about understanding that you're human, and they did talk about this as well in the creator clips that I'll link down below, that sometimes you're going to make decisions, sometimes you're going to do things, and you are human, and it's about being honest with those mistakes and saying, look, this I stand by this, I don't stand by this, and I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to get it wrong sometimes. And I think that's what makes us human. And actually I'd argue, if you are able to navigate those situations well, and you are able to be honest and be 100% transparent with your audience, yeah, you're going to lose a percentage, sure, but actually I think in the long term you'll gain more, because then you become a more trusted source. You're not just a robot who's looking to potentially extract this financial gold mine allegedly from the, YouTube ads or brand deals, etc., or making money on social media. It'll be more about, actually, no, I've built a strong connection with my audience, I've built a strong connection with the community that I've built, and I actually owe them the right answers and the own up to mistakes and being authentic to me and being true to me. And that's something that I've always done, and I hope to continue to do in all the content I do, but also when I run businesses and when I operate and work with clients, etc. It's about helping them understand what's authentic to them, and that might actually alienate a percentage of people, that might alienate potential old clients or clients in general, and that's okay, because it means some people are going to be okay with that, others aren't. And I think that's the key there, and that's some of the takeaways I took from these clips, specifically about also making money, etc. But I will leave them down in the description down below. But that's everything I wanted to cover in this week's show, so thank you ever so much for coming back and joining once again. If you are new to the channel and you enjoyed this format, why not subscribe? Brand new, you've sat here for what will likely be close to an hour, so thank you ever so much for getting this far, and I'll see you